Welcome to the Co-Host Bros Podcast, where we break down everything short-term rentals, entrepreneurship, and building a profitable hospitality business. Whether you're a host, investor, or property manager, we share real strategies, real insights, and real experiences to help you scale smarter and grow faster. Let's dive in.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 103 of the best podcast dropping game for free. My name is Matt Codd, and I'm here with Austin Spitzenberger, and we are the Co-Host Bros Podcast. Today, we have Andrea Moxham. She's going to give us a little bit of design tips and help us make some money. And so welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys for a little bit.
Yeah, and Matt, I just want to give you a quick shout out on that intro. That was like the most fluid, free-flowing intro that you've had.
Yep.
You botched 75% of the intros, whether it be the name, the joke was fluid, everything on your execution on your end with that intro was pretty good. So you set the bar pretty high there.
I had 10 options. I just went through door number 4. So I just was like, what am I going to say? I actually literally have just thought about this as I walked up the stairs to go to turn on this computer and talk to you today. So that's how good I am, folks. Just remember, come see my master class next week. So
I love it, man. Well, Andrea, go ahead. Give us a quick background on what it is kind of that you do in this space, and I guess maybe like how you got into the space. Just give us a rough background, if you will.
Yeah, so I am a short-term rental designer. The path that got me here is kind of similar to, I think, a lot of the designers in this space. I started investing in my own properties. My husband is a contractor, so we bought a couple of properties, we flipped those, we hung on to a couple as short-term rentals, converted a couple to long and mid-term rentals, but throughout that journey, we've done some sort of remodel or redesign to the space. And I just kind of fell in love with that aspect. And I thought, what if I could do this to make a living as a career? So about 4 years ago, I was running a marketing agency and I sold that company and kind of threw in the marketing towel and went all in on short-term rental design. So yeah, I come from a marketing background. That is what I went to university for. And really, I think it plays a big role in the work that I do now, but it's kind of taught me a lot of great skills to help short-term rental owners design their properties, but also kind of look at the long-term strategy and making sure that we're using my marketing skills to kind of set them up for after they launch. How can they make sure that that design is helping them down the road with marketing their property and growing their brand?
I love that. First thing that comes to mind is also that, like, I think you are the first person to ever, out of 100 episodes, come on and talk about design. So I think that's really cool, and I think that's going to be a good value add for our audience, just because I don't know, we just haven't had anyone. Then my next question is, where are you right now? Are you on a project or are you at home? And where are you based out of?
Yeah. So I am based out of Ontario, Canada. But I don't do any designing here. So I do all of my designing virtually. I design only in the US, actually. I don't take on projects here in Canada. It's just a very different market, a very different population, a lot of different regulations. So I do all my designing from here. I work with install teams that travel down to the properties in the US and actually set them up. So I never step foot in them, sadly. I have like properties in many states that I can visit if I choose to travel down there, but no, I don't step foot in them.
Nice. So do you have, and you currently have, you said you have your own vacation rentals, is that correct?
Yeah, they're here in Ontario. We have 2. So yeah, very different market here. Not a lot of we don't have the same kind of tax incentives that the Americans have. So there's just a lot less, people aren't as willing to take on the risk of buying and managing short-term rentals here in Ontario. So we self-manage, and it's been fairly easy. So it's just kind of a passive thing, not necessarily something that will ever expand too much.
Yeah, I love that. So for your services, are you go all throughout the United States? Is there a specific like niche kind of like project that you're looking for? Are you doing a little bit of everything? Do you do kind of like boutique hotel setups or glamp sites or maybe just luxury properties, like a little bit of this? What is like, I guess if somebody's listening and they're like, hey, I need to partner with somebody like you, what kind of projects are you looking for, and like how are you able to partner with other, vacation rental managers or investors as well?
Yeah, I like to think that I adapt to whatever market it is that I'm working in, but just the way that it's kind of rolled out is I do design a lot of larger kind of luxury mountain properties. So Catskill Mountains, I've done quite a few there, Georgia, Virginia, kind of Blue Ridge area, Shenandoah Valley. Yeah, it's not really necessarily been where I've, sought out projects. It's just kind of been, I guess, my portfolio kind of exemplifies the modern mountain type of property that I've consistently been designing over the past couple of years. And I guess that's where um, quite a few projects come in. So, but that's not to say that I haven't done, like I did a couple in Bradenton, a couple in Arizona. I'm actually working on two in Sedona right now. So it's kind of all over the place. But the way I like to think about it is the designer that you work with should be able to adapt to different markets, because otherwise, if they're applying the same kind of design style and the same concepts, the same pieces of furniture in the same kind of property, they're all going to wind up looking stale. They're all going to look the same. So no, I don't specify on any particular market. I do, I guess, have a bit of a soft spot for mountain properties, though.
I feel like everybody's married to a contractor, Austin. Like everybody we've talked to, like
You got to do
any
it.
any any female guests we had on here are married to a contractor. I feel like I just need to marry a contractor too. I think that's the thing to do, you know?
Oddly enough, it doesn't get more jobs done around the house because they're
That
constantly
makes
working
sense.
on other projects. You would think that we have like a palace and everything is immaculate, but we just have a really long list of things that eventually need to get done.
The kitchen cabinet's still broken from 1996. Um, so what goes into like designing a property virtually? Do you like send someone over to like measure everything, or like do you have like somebody do like a cubicasa or something and if they are going there and measuring everything, like what exactly are they measuring? Like explain that. So because I mean I want you to go like in depth as possible, right? Because it's just like it seems like there's a lot of steps and a lot of
Yeah.
time.
There
Yeah.
is, but there's one word that kind of eliminates the need for anyone to go out and take measurements, and that is Matterport. So if you're not familiar with a Matterport, it's a brand, but it's kind of like Cubicasa, but what their software or their tool does is allows you to take 3D measurements. So basically, a photographer, usually a real estate photographer, will go into a property with a Matterport device. They scan every room and it spits out a live link. And yeah, what's unique about these Matterport tours? It's like a 3D virtual tour. Is that it's the only one that I've been able to find that you can take 3D measurements on any plane. So yes, like Cubicasa, I believe you can get measurements while you're doing like a 3D walkthrough tour, but Matterport, you can like zoom in and capture the measurement between like cabinet handle holes. Like it's super, super granular. They're a couple $100 depending on how urban of a market you're in. But this is like literally what allows me to work virtually, because I'll have my client get a Matterport, I get that live link, and then I'm able to do an entire walkthrough and get all the measurements I need without them ever stepping foot back into the house. So that's kind of step one. I do quite a bit of market research before I do any designing as well, because, well, for a lot of reasons. I think coming in to design a property blindly without looking at competitors, without looking at what's happening in the market, without looking at data from competitors and kind of creating a guest profile, you're really just shooting in the dark in terms of choosing a design style. So I do quite a bit of market research first to look at what amenities make sense to be putting in this property based on data, based on competitors, based on real reviews. Like I'll use a game room as an example, but it's not a very good example because most markets benefit from having a game room. But like, let's say a very hot climate, putting in a hot tub, you might think that that makes sense for some reason. But if guests aren't commenting on it in their reviews saying, we loved it, we used it every night, it was such a nice way to wind down, it probably doesn't make sense. So that's part of my market research, is reading real reviews on competitors' listings and taking a look at what are guests actually using, what are they commenting on. And that's kind of more the qualitative piece that some of these like AirDNA and Rabu and Price Labs and things like that, they can't necessarily pick up on. That is like that sentiment of the guests. So that's kind of what starts my design process is, yeah, the Matterport and market research.
Nice.
Did you have something, Matt?
I could, but you could go. No
No,
problem.
go for it.
You didn't text me, sir. We just
We
discussed
always-
it before the show. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, usually, like lately, you've been asking the question that I was thinking, anyways. So I'm just going to see if that's the case. So go for it.
I'm reading your mind. That's fancy. Is there like 1 to like 3 things that people should do in like every market, or is it like specific when it comes to like design that can help them, I guess, increase their revenue or ROI? Or...
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I would say in each room, in every property, there are design elements or decor type things that are also functional that I would never skip in any property. Things like blackout curtains in a bedroom. You'd be surprised how many hosts are not doing this. And it drives me nuts when I hear from guests that say, like, oh, we had our baby sleep in this room and we were taping up garbage bags over the windows because there were no blackout curtains. Like, it's such an easy fix. And imagine if you were the host and you knew that people were taping garbage bags over your windows. So things like blackout curtains, I would say, apply to every market. Yeah, I think there's little things like that. I would say, yeah, I guess it depends on the room, but I would also say that one of the most overlooked pieces of the short-term rental process is space planning. And this isn't necessarily something you can just add into your property, but it's something that applies to every market, is making sure that you are able to fit the number of guests that you advertise as being able to sleep in your property to be able to eat together at a dining table or between, a couple of different dining tables. This has become something that's so important to guests. Is they're usually coming to a short-term rental on a vacation. They're looking to spend time with their family. They're looking to have an experience, and it becomes very disjointed if they're not able to eat together. So guests will go out of their way to comment on being able to all sit together for a meal, or the reverse, not being able to sit together for a meal. So maybe looking beyond space planning, my piece of advice here is to make sure you have enough seats for everyone to dine together, no matter what market you're in. That's another one.
Yeah. So it seems like you kind of take a more you're not just a designer, you're a short-term rental owner as well. So you're like taking a more consultative approach, and you're coming in and at least trying to provide value of seeing like, hey, I'm auditing listings, I'm seeing what's working. Um so how are you going about this process? So say I'm a new investor, let's just say I bought a house in the Smokies. I want to hire you, but I'm like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, can you help me, point me in the right direction? Like, what does that look like when you're working with somebody, or maybe even a property manager per se? And then they're like, hey, Austin, you're a property manager. I want to work with you and I will help obviously, but let's say maybe I don't know what I'm doing and I got a 5-bed, 5-bath house in the Smokies. How do I optimize this, or how am I taking this approach to make it the most profitable? So I guess my thing is like, how do you approach that, and like, where should the owners spend and invest money and splurge, and where should owners maybe cut back on some of their spending, because at the end of the day it's most likely an investment, so they don't want to just do everything high end design, everything the most expensive, or else they're maybe not going to make money, right? So I guess my question is where should you advise people to splurge and save, and how does that consultative method kind of work on your end? Sorry if that was a really long question, but I think you get what I'm asking.
I feel like it's a two-part question, so I'll try to break it down. In terms of determining where to spend and where to save, there are, I would say, certain areas where it makes more sense to splurge. And these are things like amenities and common areas. So if you're in a competitive market and let's say your property is a little bit more dated, you will benefit from adding like a hot tub, a sauna, or some of those almost like non-negotiable amenities that your competitors have versus like remodeling a bathroom. So amenities, things where you can almost like check a box on your Airbnb listing. Like there's no box for modern bathroom on your Airbnb listing, but there is a box for a pool or a hot tub. So amenities like that. And then secondly, I would say is those common areas. So if you can invest into, um, you know, additional and really comfortable seating in your living room, that's going to go a long way. Upgrading your beds, that's going to go a long way as well. I would say the areas where you can not spend as much, this comes down to, like the condition of the property. But let's say you have a kitchen or a bathroom that is a little bit more dated. I'm probably going to recommend painting kitchen cabinets versus replacing them. If we have to use that budget sparingly, I would rather put that into an amenity or one of the common areas versus remodeling. So that's one that I typically advise that we don't do now, especially for brand new investors or an investor who has just closed on a property. Maybe it's like they're trying to gear up for the upcoming season. It doesn't make sense to completely take that property offline and to remodel a powder room when that's not going to improve your ROI. You're not going to be able to charge an extra X amount of dollars per night based on having an upgraded bathroom. And sometimes I'll say, do that next year, do that next off season, get a bit of, get some bookings under your belt and see how this season goes and then revisit that next year. I would say, yeah, in terms of saving, it sometimes comes down to the pieces of furniture. So things like side tables and nightstands, in vacation markets, like a workstation. So things that are kind of lower touch that you're not sitting on every day. You're not touching often, like a nightstand, like you're putting your phone and a glass of water on it. You don't need to be investing hundreds and hundreds of dollars into your nightstands. So it's pieces like that where we find ways to not necessarily cut corners, because I think a good designer is able to find really nice looking stuff at a better price point where it makes sense. So like items like that. I would say, so I guess earlier when we talked about my process, I kind of stopped after the market research. That's the beginning of the project, really. So after that, it becomes less of a consulting kind of service and more of like a done for you. So the investors that I work with personally, they like to be hands off. Sometimes they've never even stepped foot in the property that they're buying. They've got a property manager that's local. They've got a contractor that's local. They've got cleaners, obviously, that are local. And they just want to kind of outsource the design to someone that can just handle it. So after that market research, I kind of, take that data away and I do all of the sourcing, all of the selecting. So every item that's going into the house, I choose for them. And then the install teams that I work with receive those items. Once everything has arrived, they go and set it up. So the investor or the owner is very hands off. Yeah, so that's a little bit more of my process kind of fleshed out, just to give you an idea that an investor or an owner does not need to be involved much at all, aside from paying for the furniture and the decor and the install. But they don't need to second guess anything. And I think that's why more and more owners are building the cost of designers into their pro forma when they're analyzing these deals, because it just helps them get up and running faster. It helps them succeed and perform better once they're up and running. So yeah, they shouldn't need to be second guessing and wondering what to do next if they're working with a good designer.
Yeah, no, all of that makes sense, and I like how you described like, hey, this is what my clients typically look like. They're not really involved in this process. They let me kind of do my thing. They trust me. They're investors. They're looking at maybe the time aspect of it. It's like, how good of a job can you do, and how quickly can we get this thing up versus, doing everything themselves. So let's go on the other side of that spectrum. Let's say I buy my house and I decide not to partner with you and I decide to do everything myself, right? So I don't know what I'm doing, but I think, oh, I'm going to save money and time, which at the end of the day is not going to be the case because I don't know what I don't know. So I'm like, I don't want to pay you because I can do it myself and I can save money. I know it's going to take me a lot longer and I understand that. But let's just say I decide to do that anyways. What are some of the mistakes that I'm going to make when I'm trying to do exactly what you do in that kind of situation? So where I decide to furnish and design this thing myself, where am I going to mess up?
You're going to have a hodgepodge property. You're not going to have a clear design style. So every room is going to feel like it's a different property. There's no cohesion in terms of design style, furniture shapes, colors, paint colors. You'll see that it just kind of feels like they walked into a Facebook Marketplace store and bought what was available, so nothing flows from room to room. Although I do often see properties that are the exact opposite, where someone went into like a big box store and bought everything that they have on the floor and had it shipped to their property. So everything matches. Everything is the same. The paint colors are the same in every bedroom. The beds are the same in every bedroom. And this is such a problem because if you think about the way that guests looking at an Airbnb browse, they kind of glaze over the number of bedrooms and bathrooms and guests after they've, put in their search filters. They start looking through Airbnbs. They're going to look at the top photos or the first few photos. If all the bedrooms look exactly the same, they're not going to distinguish like, oh, there's actually 8 bedrooms in this house. They're going to look at them all and be like, all right, these are all the same. And they're going to move on. So I would say those are kind of the two avenues that DIY design ends up taking, is this like complete hodgepodge of no cohesion versus the like big box blowout sale showroom, maybe we'll call it, of an Airbnb. And it's really challenging working with these types of clients because they've already invested in this furniture and maybe they spent a decent amount of money on it and maybe they didn't buy it all secondhand. Maybe they invested in good quality stuff. It just doesn't work well together. So now they're a little bit frustrated because they're like, okay, now I have to pay a designer to tell me that all of this stuff sucks and I have to replace it. So they're coming to you as in like this really frustrated type of place versus someone who's just closed on a property and it's completely vacant. They're so excited to see what a designer can do. So it's really tricky. Not to mention from a design standpoint, it's not easier to work on a property that already has some furniture in it. I think a lot of investors and owners are like, well, we already have beds. So that takes time off of your design fee because you don't have to choose the beds. But now it's like, okay, I need to find nightstands and dressers and curtains and things like that that go with these beds that you've chosen. So it's no easier. So if anyone listening to this is like on the brink of DIY designing their property, explore how much time and money you can probably save by working with a designer right off the hop. Doesn't have to be me, just anyone.
Yeah, I think one thing, I think you explained all that really well, and everything you said makes complete sense. One thing I want you to touch on though is like the time aspect of it. Like, I can imagine that if I was doing this myself, like I'm going to go to this store and buy this and try and order this and do all this logistical things, and I really don't have a checklist, so I don't know how many spoons we need. And like, do you? I guess that's not really the question. My question is kind of drawing a blank here. Where's I going with this? Sorry, I got
Timeline?
lost. Yeah,
How
timeline. There
long
we
does
go.
it
Sorry,
take? Okay.
my mind went somewhere else. So if you're an investor, like from a timeline perspective, how much I guess time would you be saving versus me trying to DIY everything myself, or versus you having checklists and systems and processes in place? Is there time savings that also yield money savings by using somebody like you?
Huge, because as the person purchasing the property is preparing to close, meeting with lawyers and lenders and doing all that stuff, at least me as a designer, I'm working behind the scenes on the strategy. So I, at this point, probably already have the Matterport. I know what kind of design style we're going to be using. I know where we're going to be getting our furniture. I know what our budget is. So we figured all of that out, usually before the owner even closes on the property or within the first couple of days. So I think that right there. And then basically what that means is as soon as they get the clear to close, which is a couple of days before, I can start doing all of the designing. I like to have that confidence of them having the clear to close because I have designed properties in the past where the owner maybe didn't get their permit and the entire design plan that I created for them was a waste of their money because they couldn't even operate as a short-term rental. So once we have that clear to close is when I start doing all of the sourcing and the selecting for, I would say, like a 5-bedroom home. That's usually about 2 weeks. So basically, maybe I would say a week and a half after you close on your property is when you can start purchasing everything. And me personally, I'm only going to source items that are in stock and ready to ship. It makes no sense as a short-term rental owner to be buying from like Pottery Barn and Crate and Barrel where you're waiting 8 weeks for a sofa. So a designer is going to know where to look for the good stuff that is affordable and ships quickly. Yeah, so basically 2 weeks after you close, your furniture and decor is going to start arriving, whether that's at the property, whether that's to a warehouse or to a receiver. You can't tell me that someone who doesn't live locally doing this on their own is able to move that quickly and in a way where it's going to look nice. Like, yes, they can, of course, buy furniture the day after they close and it can start arriving right away. But have they measured to make sure that it's all going to fit? Is it, cohesive with the rest of the property? Or are they kind of just going room by room? So there's a huge, I think, time and cost saving to working with a designer because there's a lot. Like, let's say you're doing some remodeling. The owner is likely maybe applying for permits or interviewing contractors, whereas the designer is working behind the scenes, choosing all of the tile and that's arriving so that when you've chosen your contractor, everything's already there for them. Whereas, not working with a designer, you find that contractor, they come in to an empty house and you're like, okay, now what? What am I doing here?
So, when you're designing a property, so are you starting are you designing from like one room at a time, or are you going from like the uh like a common area and then working your way out? Like, how do you determine where you're starting the theme of designing this house? And yeah, and like what's your plan of action?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about the design strategy, and this is where we determine kind of the overarching design style. Like, are we doing mid-century modern? Are we doing, modern organic? Are we doing industrial? So that kind of shapes the entire project because it doesn't matter which room I start with. I know what that design style is going to be. And in that design strategy, I'm also specifying colors that we're using throughout the property, patterns, textures, things like that. But in terms of where I actually start, it depends on a couple of things. One is if there's any remodeling happening. So let's say I'm working with a client who has an older home and we need to dive immediately into like replacing flooring and tile and maybe the kitchen. So that's always number one, because you can't move furniture into a house that has no floors. So that's always step one. But yeah, in terms of choosing which room to design first, to be honest, it's usually the one that excites me the most. So if we're doing like a badass game room with a rock climbing wall, I'm probably going to start there. I also take my client's budget and I line by line separate it per space. So sometimes I'll start with those larger ones that I know are going to use more budget, because if I do the reverse and I start with, smaller bedrooms and bathrooms, and then I get down to the very end and need to design a huge game room and I've used up all the budget, then I have to go back and like start tweaking things in some of those smaller spaces. So I typically like to start with the big kind of amenity stacked spaces. It doesn't really matter, I guess, because I've got that strategy and I know I can always refer back to the mood board to look at like, what colors are we using, what paint colors, what style of light fixtures and design style. So.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Go where all the money's spent first and then work your way out. That's a good idea. It's probably solid advice, everybody. Go where you're going to spend the money first. So if I was working with you per se, do I have to have an install team? Is that a requirement for people that work with you? Or
Not
is
at
there
all.
like, I can ship it to you for you, or here's just a pick list. You guys order all this stuff. Like, you have different tiers, or how does that work?
So I don't actually do any of the ordering. The client does the ordering. So technically, I'm providing them with a virtual design that they can purchase and implement themselves. They can purchase and have another install team do the install, or they can work with the installers that I work with. That's my preferred process, for no other reason other than it's better execution. It's so challenging when a client is maybe somewhat local to the area, but not local enough that they're spending like weeks setting up the property. They maybe fly out for like 5 days and expect to get everything done, and they have to cut a lot of corners. So no, by no means do clients have to work with my install team. It's another one of those areas where you can get up and running so much faster and have, a better looking property if you use an install team. But it's not always the case. A lot of clients try to save money by doing their own install, and it's a lot of work. If you've set up a property.
But
Yeah,
you're
I
picking
think.
out, sorry to interrupt you, Matt, but you're picking out like all this list. Like you'll have a line item list of like, you need to order these spoons on Amazon because they could come in 1 or 2 days. You need to order, like you're doing the shopping, you're taking the legwork of the shopping out of it for me, right? Like you're not just
Yeah,
giving me the design board and just being like, hey, this is the picture. You got to go figure it out. You're making the package that's going to save them a lot of time, right? Because that's the big thing.
exactly. Yeah, the
Okay,
shopping
gotcha.
list is the key. So I break it out. There's a tab for every space in the house, and everything is hyperlinked, and it's a very tight spreadsheet in terms of being able to tell like, okay, what color and what size and how many of each item to buy. But that makes it very easy for them to just go through, add to cart, add to cart, add to cart, and check out.
Yeah, you work with my homegirl Kim, huh?
I do.
I've
Yeah.
seen your list. I've seen your list because
I'll
she
have
made
you.
me go pull boxes in a house one time. And she's like, "Can you check off all this wallpaper?" And I said, "Holy shit, there's like 14 different boxes of wallpaper." And there was like descriptions and links. And I was like, I got to open up all these boxes to figure out which one's which. Like, this is ridiculous. And that actually leads into my next question: wallpaper, yay or nay? Do you think people are overusing wallpaper, or do you think they're underutilizing wallpaper? And where should you put wallpaper?
I think they're underutilizing wallpaper. And the way that I know this is because I put it in almost every design plan that I work on, but because it's intimidating from a cost perspective, I guess, to wallpaper like an entire room, it's not cheap to get good stuff. And two, if you don't know how to put it up yourself, it's intimidating to learn how. And it can be expensive to hire someone to put wallpaper up. So I think for those three reasons, it's so underutilized because owners are just like, oh, forget it, I'll paint it, or do nothing, which is even worse. Geez, where wouldn't I suggest wallpapering? Even bathrooms. Like if you can get high quality wallpaper for bathrooms, it's just one of the not the only one of the key ways to differentiate your property, because you can take advantage of these lazy hosts that are not doing wallpaper. Like everyone can buy the same furniture on Wayfair. Everyone can add a hot tub. Everyone can add a sauna. But wallpaper is one of those things that I think is so under leveraged. And there's so many options. There's so much variety. And it's a great way I've talked a little bit about not having cohesion from room to room. This is such a nice way to do that because it's something you can't ignore. You see wallpaper very clearly in photos and when you walk into a space. So this is a great way to be able to tie those colors in together from room to room, or even some of the same patterns. Love wallpaper. This is wallpaper here behind me. We don't even have much wallpaper in our own house because of the reason that I don't like to put it up. I try to task my husband with putting it up. He doesn't like it either. But it's key in short-term rentals.
Is that I thought wall was painted black. Is that a textured wallpaper?
Yeah, it is. And that's another thing I want to mention is everyone I think assumes like wallpaper has to be flashy and ugly and look like grandma's apartment. But it doesn't. There's so many subtle ways to add wallpaper to add texture to a wall. So like lime washing is a kind of popular trend in design right now, which is a type of paint that gives texture to walls. You can achieve the same thing with wallpaper. There's tons of wallpapers that are not flashy in color, but they just add a really interesting texture and a little bit of color to rooms. So even if you have like a really modest, sophisticated, mature property where you think wallpaper would not fit in, it will. The one thing that I have not...
Good, go for it.
I was just going to say one thing that I have not tried yet, and I think it's because no one has been willing to try it out for me, is wallpapering on top of wood like this, like tongue and groove. It can apparently be done. Obviously, it depends on the pattern that you choose, but something like this could be applied to something like this as long as you like kind of tuck it into the seams. But no one has been willing to try it for me yet. So I don't know. Maybe I'll need to ask Kim if she can do it in a property for me.
Yeah,
someone's got to be the case study.
Even if you have like a design and kind of make it like almost like 3D, I guess, or pop out because it goes in and out. But no, yeah, that wallpaper is cool. The texture wallpaper. There was this. I'm not really. I don't know. Like I've never really liked it, like the texture stuff like that, until I saw this show on Apple TV. I forgot what it was, but they had this like dark blue textured wallpaper in the house, and I was like, damn, that looks really cool. And it's like it must have to be hit at a certain angle for it to look really good. You know what I mean? Because like the angle you're at right now with light, it just looks like your wall's painted. I would have known that was wallpaper until you told me, right? But wallpaper does make a difference. I was just wondering what your take was. We have this plain Jane property that we manage in the same area, and there's this other guy I'm friends with who's like a block away, same exact house, and he's like always like, I don't have any bookings. How are you always booked? There's wallpaper in the house. Like it's just a design. It's like it's stuff I would never buy for my house. Like I just wouldn't do it. But it's like when I look at the pictures of this house, everyone's like, oh my God, it's so nice, because people want to go places they don't, that doesn't look like their house.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what would be okay? So I did ask you about amenities all over the place, but let's just say, how about you just give us like one for like the top like markets you've worked in, like top mountain, top this, like what would stand out for people?
Pool.
You mean, what's that?
Huh?
Just put a pool in. That's all you got to do.
You know
Just
what?
put a pool.
Like, it's almost unfair how I think, well, any property can perform with a pool, but they're expensive and you need
I
to
was just
like
joking.
shut down. Yeah, no, it's true though. Sometimes you see just the ugliest properties on Airbnb, but they have a pool and they're killing it. Yeah, it is so dependent on the market. Um, and also the guest avatar that's traveling there. I see a lot of, I'm going to categorize them as wellness inspired amenities standing out right now. So if you can dedicate a space in your property to being like a wellness zone, because I think it used to be the idea that you go on vacation and you're not bothering taking care of your health. You're just kind of ignoring that for a couple of days, but that's not the case anymore. People are so into like cold therapy and infrared saunas and um, you know, interesting gym equipment like reformer Pilates. So by no means is this an easy to implement amenity, but some sort of like wellness room, I think, is one that does well in most markets because people are concerned about health and wellness everywhere. Stargazing domes, that's another one that's a little bit easier to implement, that photograph really well, that people love, kids and adults. Obviously, you have to have like an open sky to be able to benefit from it, really. But that's another one that tends to do well. You have to adapt it a little bit depending on the climate. So if it's super hot, you got to make sure you have ventilation, or if you're in a climate that freezes, then you need to have some sort of insulation. So depends on where you are, but that's another one that yeah, does well in I would say all markets. That is still somewhat unique. It's another one of those ones that I think is intimidating because it's relatively low cost, but it's not easy to set up because you have to figure out how to control the climate. Yeah, I mean, it's so dependent on the market, but beach volleyball and like sports courts, pickleball courts, those are definitely very popular in beach markets, hotter markets. Yeah, we're doing a yoga studio with like a room full of backlit mirrors and like bars for, like BARRE, in a Sedona property that I'm working on, a golf simulator in a property that I'm working on in Virginia. Yeah, it really depends. I think you have to look at what do none of my competitors have and what can I create an experience around. I think that's another thing. You can't just like plunk an amenity at your property and check the box and say it's done. You need to be styling it for your photos. You need to make sure that you're incorporating different senses in that amenity. So, like string lights and maybe like some sort of Bluetooth speaker or record player. Scents are like becoming a thing in some short-term rentals. Anyways, that's separate from an amenity. But yeah, those are my kind of 2 cents on how to incorporate unique amenities, but also make sure that you're not just stopping there, that you're looking at how are guests going to experience this and what are they going to comment on in their review.
No, that's awesome. The gym kind of scares me liability wise, but I think it would be cool though to go somewhere and they had like a full like gym. Like that'd be pretty insane. I think Austin would be like, hell yeah, right, Austin?
Yeah, I think that'd
Another
be
one
a
of
pretty
my
cool thing.
favorite amenities actually is, and I love doing these because it's just such a easy, not easy, but if a property has a lot or several walk-in closets, converting at least one of them into like a glam room or a get ready room where all the ladies can do their hair and makeup together. I love doing these. Guests love them. So you do wallpaper, you get like little makeup stools, some cool lighting, lots of mirrors, and make sure that you've got enough electric for like hair dryers and things like that. But yeah, women love getting ready and taking pictures in here. So these are um, pretty easy to set up, and you typically don't need multiple walk-in closets in a short-term rental. So it's kind of a better use of that space.
Oh, that's genius. I'm gonna call my client after this about this. She has several walk-in closets.
Yeah.
Sweet. So if anybody here wanted to like follow you, find you, get your services or whatever, just say, hey, what up? How can they do that?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, probably most active on my personal account, which is Andrea Moxham at Andrea Moxham. And then my website is moxieandco.ca. Yeah, sign up for my newsletter at the bottom of my website. I send out tips like this each week. Yeah, just to help the owners and investors that maybe want to continue DIYing their design, but still want to move the needle and make an impact. So, yeah, I send newsletters with lots of actionable tips to take away and implement right away.
That's sweet. Well, I mean, I appreciate you coming on here. I'm definitely going to sign up for your newsletter. I'm a man. I could use all the tips I can get. So I personally appreciate it, and I know Austin appreciates that. And we really thank you for your time. And hopefully, you're here to be able to provide everybody value today. I think it's awesome, and I'm a proponent of wallpaper. So wallpaper. But yeah, thanks again so much. And with that, I'll just let Austin wrap it up for us.
All right. Thank y'all for listening. Peace.